everybody. My name is Steve Peterson.
And my name is Jack Hinkle. And hey, everybody, check out, if you're watching, our new studio location.
Wow, look at this.
It may look familiar for you
we've
longtime listeners and watchers.
Early in our career, we did an interview here with Scott Spradling. He was sitting right here.
He was.
Right, in this office.
And we were sitting
Right here. I think
Yeah.
we were doing it right here. And so,
And it was his office.
yep,
And Steve is moving in right now.
yep, it's moving day.
It's moving day.
Yep, Scott Spradling has retired, and I'm assuming the director of music responsibilities, and so I'll be moving in here in the next few days.
I hope you get some like artwork or something. 'Cause
I
it
know
looks
Scott
really
did
dry.
have some fun stuff in here. It's
Good.
like, I mean, he had some nice hangings and swag. It's kind of lonely in here right now.
Got
but
some nice filing cabinets, though.
beautiful
A
filing.
lot of filing cabinets.
That's great. So
Is
I
that
got to move out.
mahogany?
I got to move out of my. I did take a video of my office
Aw.
because I was like, I just wanted to remember
the
what it looked
memories?
like. Yeah, because I've been there for 14 years. You know, I want to remember what it looked like.
Dang. Well,
So-
everyone's moving now
Yep.
because Brian takes yours, Nikki takes Brian's, and I'm just kind of sitting in my office, just like twiddling my. Everyone else is like getting the U-Haul packed up, and I'm just like chilling in mine. I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah, so we're gonna try this setup, right?
Yep.
See how this works out. So it's a new environment. It will be maybe sometimes if there are ensembles in the band room or if there's ensembles behind us outside. This looks outside. So if there's, we'll have to see if we reevaluate the situation. But this is convenient.
Yeah.
We were in a classroom downstairs in a different hallway, so we had to set up and tear down.
Well, and I taught in that classroom, and now I don't, so it feels a little, little odd to stake our claim there. So
It is. Yeah. So we're
Yeah.
back here in the music office. And so it is now summer. It's the middle of June,
Mhm.
right?
Yep.
If you're listening to this, we're coming up on the big heat wave. It's like Monday the 17th and possibly a lot of heat coming up.
I walked outside at like a little before 7 this morning,
Yeah.
and it was already humid. It was already
Yeah.
hot and humid at like in the 6 a.m. time slot.
Mm,
It's okay. We know
And
how
Jack
it
went
goes.
running, didn't you,
I
Jack?
did, dude. I ran this morning. Beat
Feel-
the heat.
Feel good?
I'm not really a wake up and run person, but today I was, based on my schedule for the day, and it did not. It did not feel good. I usually need like some food in me, but we made it through.
Good.
Yeah. So today, I think is the 50th episode of Chops.
This is the 50th episode.
50th episode.
Wow, we're like at the 1-year anniversary of doing the first Chops episode about a year ago
It really was. Probably was when we recorded, yeah.
in the Menden.
Oh my gosh, we were in the Menden, and all you could hear were birds on the audio.
Where we were eating pretzels and goldfish,
Yeah.
right?
Yep, sitting
And,
outside.
and then the second one we
Menden.
did in your living room in separate couches,
Yes.
and then that's where I told you that everything's a invitation, not an obligation, and you did the gym stare. Into
Oh,
the
that
camera.
was good.
That was fun.
And that's when you said, "This school, what is it? This,
This
school's bugging."
This school's bugging.
classic.
That was
Okay.
in, and then we did a couple in your dining room,
Mm-hmm.
and then we shifted over to
To school. We were in the
school-
practice rooms for
practice
a while.
rooms.
And then we went down to our quote studio, and now this could be Endgame right here. That's
Yeah.
interesting. A journey through Chops. So we did kind of want to talk about Chops as for this episode, but not Chops as in the podcast, but Chops as in like what we've gained from talking about this every week, apparently 50 times. And we said, Steve, we do this podcast for us to grow. That's what we said, right?
Right.
Is
It's
that
our
what- is that what-
professional. It's our professional development.
It is our professional.
And we said we would do this because it helps us be better teachers. And we said when it's not fun or productive anymore, we would cancel.
So we haven't canceled, which means it's either fun or productive.
Right.
Hey, so this is PD?
Yeah.
So now that you're my boss / administrator, can I count this toward my PD hours?
Yeah.
Oh, sweet.
Well, we can.
Let's go.
We can towards our license renewal.
Really?
Yeah, these are meetings. This is like professional. I mean,
let's go.
right?
Then if we make them live shows,
I mean,
anyone who
they're all-
attends can get their PD points with us. Let's go.
It's all out there.
It is.
It's all out there. Like we're talking about, we're professional. We're developing professionally.
I never have to go to a staff meeting again. Just kidding. I'll go. They're fine. Okay. Yeah. So we've been growing every time we talk, and not just like in the episode that we do that, but like you and I always
Our
come.
waistline.
Dang.
Sorry.
No, I run. We always talk about them throughout the week, and like I mean, you and I talk all the time throughout the
Right.
week, and we teach together. And I mean, I feel like we draw parallels to whatever we talked about for that week, that episode. And we're
Yes.
just like, oh yeah.
Yeah.
And coming back to reels, you're like, oh, we should show this to a kid. But just this whole idea of like we were talking about this before we pressed record, but putting a microphone in front of us, you called it a reality check.
It is a reality check.
I know you already said that to me 5 minutes ago, but can you say it again?
Reality check. It's the idea that you're holding yourself professionally accountable for attempting to improve yourself as an educator. So we've been talking about best practices for knowing your students, knowing your content, knowing your teaching, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the fact that you put it out there on the airwaves, whomever listens to it, whether it be students, teachers, parents, administrators, that we're saying that with a degree of authenticity. And I would say most of it is authentic. Of course, there's going to be some stuff that doesn't stick, but I think the intent of this process is to make everything relative and applicable to what we do. And so I don't think there's very much that we have said that I don't think there's anything that I've said that I don't believe in. And I think most of the things that we've said, we've tried to implement or are factually based that we have done those.
Mm-hmm.
But it is interesting because it is an archive of almost a stream of consciousness of educator speak.
I wouldn't even say almost. I feel like
It is. It is a stream
we
of conscious.
We don't rehearse anything.
Right.
We start talking.
But because it's public that anybody can listen to it or watch it, there is a degree of accountability that a one-on-one conversations at your old coffee house doesn't have. This has more of a sense of accountability and professionalism because you can't, I mean, we could choose to make it more of a negative-based podcast and more of a sarcasm-based podcast and more of a throwing excuses, right? Or undercutting systems that are there or programs or, you know, governments or legislation or whatever. But we don't really choose to do that. We choose to talk about the action and the heart of being a teacher. And we try, and so everything that we say is being recorded and everything we say is being put out on the airwaves. So it is a reality check.
That was really good.
Thank you.
What it is to be at the heart of a teacher, Steve. Wow, that's good.
And I really tried not to use some of my, but
Good job.
I,
No, that was good. The heart of a teacher. Well, it's so easy. It's so easy to do the excuses, to blame whatever the government's changing or blame whatever
Right.
the admin's doing to you.
Right.
But it doesn't matter. I mean, isn't that like the goal of what we teach our kids? Is that you got to play the hand you've been dealt.
right.
It might not be the easiest one all the time, but it's about playing the game. It's not about you having the cards.
Yeah, you got to play the game.
And I hope we teach that way, and I think we do. And doing this, talking about it every week, it does. It kind of makes, like, for me, like, there's the Mr. Hinkle that teaches, and then there's like the Mr. Hinkle that is like talking shop with you, and they're the same person, but I'm really, well, you were talking about this before, like being kind of self-aware and
Yeah.
like really like recording yourself kind of does make you check that. And then being self-aware, you're trying to be the best version that you can make of what you're going for. I want to be the best teacher I can. And so I kind of talk shop about these ideas with you as this Mr. Hinkle, and then I try and go out there and be
Put
that
it into
Mr. Hinkle
practice,
and
yes.
put it into practice. And I do think, like, I can think of moments that maybe this sounds cheesy, but I was like I'm thinking of Chops while I'm in the classroom. That I've said this is how I would respond to a kid in this situation, so I'm going to choose to respond to the kid that way. Not because I said it on Chops, but because that's who I want to be.
And you wanted that to be what you were going to be in the classroom.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. So, yeah, the level of self-awareness that this, and not just being in front of the microphone at that self-awareness, but the being in front of the kids, being
Right.
with the staff.
I think of blending, like you said, the Mr. Peterson that's here in the podcast and Mr. Peterson that's with the students,
Mhm.
that obviously there's going to be some separation, but at the heart, that's got to be the same person, or this is not true. This is not really authentically who we are, right?
This is it. I think this is who we are.
Hmm.
And that, I mean, the show wouldn't, we wouldn't want to keep doing it if it
Right.
wasn't who we were.
Well,
Right.
and I think it would feel uncomfortable. I'm not thinking that there's like hundreds of kids listening to it, but I know of certain kids that do, and that I think that would be an odd realization, of feeling like we're presenting ourselves one way, and then students are seeing something else. But I think they're at least the intent is there. The execution may have not always landed correctly, but the intent to follow that process and to follow those words of what we're telling ourselves in the podcast, the intent is to make that all come true.
Some evidence that it did,
Mm-hmm.
which is, I think, kind of funny. But you were teaching piano probably like in April or May, and I had prep, and I came down to talk to you about something, and it was like in the middle of question of the day or something. And, whenever I walk into your room, I kind of feel bad because I tend to just blow up your class, or we just start.
Which I
yeah.
appreciate.
Because they're deep into concentration as they're talking about their favorite fast food restaurants and the 574 or whatever it was.
Right.
But you were talking, and you always throw me stuff like, oh, okay, this kid, yeah, blah, blah, blah about this or whatever. And then we kind of started getting into ideas like, oh, it'd be really fun if we did this, this, and this. And you and I are just kind of like in front of the kids, just like talking like, oh, this would be cool to do this. And some kid who sat like at piano 4, I think, was like right next to me, and he goes, are you guys chopping? Like, are you guys like doing chops right now, like in front of us? Just like, and we both looked at each other and just kind of shrugs and said like, yeah, kind of are. So like the kids that know about it see it, at least that kid did. He like saw it happen in the classroom. Were we teaching? Debatable. I mean, I wasn't.
Right.
I mean, I just showed up. But there is some sense of like realness to it when we're in the classroom, at least evidenced by this one student. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
I do. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm just trying to think back through like this whole year. We could think about stuff we learned from doing the podcast,
Mm-hmm.
stuff we didn't expect that came out of the podcast,
Okay.
surprises or whatever, maybe stuff we want to do differently. If we want to talk to our producers about extending the contract for Chops, I imagine we do.
Mm-hmm.
So anything coming to mind out of that stuff?
You know how many times band directors will say you need to record your ensembles,
Yes.
and then it's when you do, you feel like you just want to crawl in a hole.
Yeah, throw your phone against a wall
Right.
and you listen to it.
So it is on that level. It is been an interesting process listening to myself. I don't listen to every episode front to back, but I listen to a lot of them, and I think that is it is productive listening to yourself speak. And I don't just say it from a production value standpoint, because you listen to different podcasts, and I do too. And I listen I inherently listen to the quality of the production, right? And the tone of the voice, the grammar, the inflection, the consistency, right? And so it is interesting listening to myself speak and not having any way to change it. But then also I think that's something that comes to mind in a classroom, and how I speak, how I come across, my speed, my tone, my clarity, my repetition, how complex or how simple, my vocabulary, length of sentences, phrases, that I think are really interesting. Because when certain people, when they speak, you're just kind of drawn to something about the way people phrase things, and then like the tone of their voice, right? And then I think about that as a teacher. Like, are the students attracted to my voice? Like, is that, or are they just going, gosh, would you shut up? But just the whole package of the speaking, the whole presence. Is it filled with anxiety? Is it filled with tension? Is it filled with happiness? Is it filled with gladness? Does it sound humble? Does it sound confident? I think about those things. Like, how does my voice sound to the ears of the students in my room?
And then I imagine you're taking that to the classroom as you're taking it here, and then I'm imagining that may even slip into your personal life at points.
Absolutely. And sometimes I almost become too aware of it, and then I'm like evaluating myself as I speak. And then it kind of makes you tongue-tied.
Snap out of Mr. Peterson, go back to Steve.
Right, because you're like in a different place, like judging what I'm saying as I'm talking to friends or family.
And a lot of students wonder if teachers are the same human in the classroom as they are in their personal lives. I think the answer is yes.
Yes.
Like you can't be, well, you can be somebody else, but that's so exhausting because then you have to remember who you're trying to be. Or who you're faking to be. I mean,
it's like having a lie. Like if you have, like watching some crime show, somebody gets in a rabbit hole because they've told a lie.
Did I lose my pinky finger or my pinky toe? Like what? No, because the kids wonder that, and I mean, I remember wondering that about you guys when I came here on staff, and I was like, oh, they're the exact same people. I just call you Steve now instead of Mr. Peterson. Like that. It's the same. Okay, one thing that I thought about, you had to do like philosophies of ed, like in college. And if you are a non-education person, in college you have to write these essays that are called philosophies of education. And it's basically a written out form of like what you believe teaching should be, what you believe kids and teachers' relationship, all that stuff, what it should be. And I remember as a joke that I wanted to turn in the DVD to School of Rock to my professor, because that was like, I wasn't in college when that movie came out, but like Jack Black changed those kids' lives with a guitar. And I was like, I want to do that. Let's go. That's fun. So, you write that in college, which makes no sense to me because you have no idea what you're talking about. You have no idea. You have not been in a classroom for a semester.
Did you write that? Can you recall like where you were in college? Like, were you a second?
I was a freshman.
Oh, gosh.
I was writing that at 18 years old.
Philosophy of music education.
And, of course, like I had a really good music education professor. And that class was ME 101, Music Education 101. And I don't know if a lot of colleges, did you have a class like that?
Okay. We had an intro to music ed. It was my sophomore year.
So I don't think a lot of colleges did it their freshman year. So that was kind of cool. But it was very purposeful that, like, we weren't supposed to know what we're talking about because it's like, you're getting your feet wet for the first time. But I'm just thinking about that, and I'm like, what would I have even put? Kids should grow through the vehicle of music with relationships. Like, I'm saying all these words that I don't know what they mean. You're like trying to write like your doctoral thesis day one.
Right.
So now, like, looking back, I feel like I could turn in the URL to CHOPS for the philosophy of education.
Yep.
Right? Because this is like basically what CHOPS is a verbal collection of our philosophies of education and what we believe it should be. And we've never been asked to craft a philosophy of education after college, right? No administrator has ever said, please turn in that by the end of the week on Friday. Like, no one cares because they walk into your classroom and they see you and they can
Right.
kind of piece it together. But I think doing this has been really beneficial because it really is a philosophy of education. What we believe, what we want, what we strive for,
Mhm.
and who we are. And I feel like I can keep digging toward the center of that because you're never going to, I mean, I think if you're a good teacher, you're never going to finish your philosophy of education. It will always be kind of
Correct.
tweaked. And I feel like every week we're here, I'm like tweaking that. And I can have that as my like cornerstone when I go to teach.
Right.
Of like who I want to be and
Yeah.
what I value. And I just have to, it centers me when I'm in the classroom.
So this is your philosophy of music education or philosophy of education.
I think so.
Would you, so this is not an anxious project for you doing this every week, I'm assuming. But would it be anxiety producing to say next week on Chops podcast, I'd like you to read your 4-page paper about your current philosophy of music education?
That would mean I'd have to write a 4-page paper.
I know. Would that make you anxious?
Yes.
Yeah.
I could bring in next week my one I wrote my freshman year of college.
I think I could probably do that too.
Oh my gosh. Oh, if we'd have to redact it. It'd probably be.
Because I think, okay. No,
Say it, Steve.
Okay. I think it was Intro to Music Education. Ours was at the end of our second year. That's kind of when we started to get into music education. And I think my paper was called Why Music? And I think my last phrase was what? Well, how did I end the paper?
Why music?
Well, that's how it started. That was the name of the essay. But what was the final phrase I put in there?
I feel like I should know this, and I have no idea.
Why not music?
I can see like 19-year-old Steve at the computer lab, like typing away. It's like was it like an 8 a.m. class? You pulled an all-nighter. You're there at like 7:35, and you're like, I gotta print this bad boy out and get to class. You're like on your conclusion paragraph. You're like, why not music? Control P, Control P. Let's go.
That was it.
That's awesome.
And I know the person, obviously, who taught me in that class. And she ended up being a mentor. She was the one that had to counsel me when I told that Darnell story and told that kid to shut up. She was my advisor. But she was basically kind of like, we need to talk. Like it. She was like, you did not hit the mark. You did not hit it. So it was interesting because this professor, doctor that I had, ended up being, she was the chairperson for the music ed, and she was our advisor. But then also she became like the assistant dean. But then she like went to the Cleveland Institute. What is it? What is the
Cleveland one of those things,
Yeah,
CIM or
she became like the acting dean.
Oh wow, okay.
And okay, but here's the reason I know this is a good hook into this whole experience. Okay, so I kept in touch with her. Like when I went back to DePaul, I would see her, and then every once in a while I'd send her an email. And then I'd look for her one day, and she was gone on the DePaul website. And I forget how I got in contact with her, but I found her in Cleveland, and then I cold called her.
Okay.
Probably about, it's either right before or right after the pandemic. I cold called her. And I said, her name's Judy. I said, Judy? Yes. I mean, she's like an administrator in Ohio.
Wow.
And I go, this is Steve. She goes, okay. I said, this is Steve Peterson. She goes, oh my gosh. And she's like, Steve Peterson, And I said, I'm just calling you to tell you this, that when I was in your class as a sophomore, as a young music ed student, I didn't really know, when you said, why music education, I didn't really know how to answer that question. And I said, I understand I told her that. She goes, I'm so happy. Like, I don't think she called me on it. But I said, I think I figured it out. I think I understand why you weren't impressed with my early writings. And so it just ended up being a good talk and exchanging of social media accounts and
Nice.
stuff and sharing. And, but yeah, why not music? There's a good title
Why
for a
not
book.
music? Because of Darnell. That's why not.
But that's an interesting question, thinking about, or an interesting scenario that you were asked to write as an 18 or 19-year-old, your philosophy of music education, when that's like your preconceived, right? Obviously, there was some validity to doing that exercise. They wanted you to come up with an idea of why you were going to do this. But in actuality, you were just you were regurgitating some readings you made about
Right.
or some things.
Well, and honestly, because I was so limited in my knowledge, it was pretty easy. You know what I mean? Like, it's one of those things, the more you know, the more you know you don't know.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm sure it's horrible if I tried to read it, but it felt at the time like pretty straight ahead. I was like, because this. Interestingly, the very first assignment she had us do, first thing, was email our former teachers and thank them. And we had to like BCC her on the email. So I remember sending you and Scott an email and BCCing her, which like should have keyed me in maybe a bit to like what the philosophy of ed was, maybe something a little more based in like, growing in relationships through music, somewhere more along those lines.
Yeah.
But, 18-year-old me didn't really have the chops for that at that point. But I mean, that was like pretty interesting to like have that experience of writing that when I have never taught in a classroom ever.
Right.
Does it feel like this week we're doing more of this? Is that just me? I feel like I'm like looking more, I'm like pivoting more.
Well, one of the things is we used to sit in chairs that rotated, that spun.
Oh.
So you might have to turn your chair in. Does that feel better?
Okay. That's
We would do more of this.
We did? Okay.
We used to.
'Cause
Now it's more like, and here's the news.
That's what, maybe it's because of the table backdrop combo. I'm not sure.
We're going to have to continue to work on this.
Yeah, the feng shui is going to need some love. We'll talk to our set design team.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So that was an interesting
Mm-hmm.
place to go.
Mm-hmm.
Any surprises?
About chops?
Yes. The process, the reactions of listeners. Okay, here's my surprise, which maybe it's bad that it's a surprise, but we've actually received a lot of comments about how applicable it is to non-musicians, non-educators. Obviously, that was our goal from the start, is that it could be picked up, but I think I like honestly was surprised that like people have said
It worked.
it worked, or at least like they can find the ways that it relates.
Right.
Which was kind of cool to hear. But the more I think about it, like we're talking about the philosophy of education, but that kind of goes for anything, doesn't it? Don't you want your business to grow with relationships?
This is kind of best practices in general,
Yeah.
right? No, that's
think
true.
so.
That was one of our things that we talked about early on, was making it applicable for a band director or a seventh grade science teacher.
Because pre-chops, when we like messed around with this idea, we thought it was going to be like a band podcast, right? Like we wanted to be like the After Sectionals clone, right? But that wasn't us.
No, because I don't think we were bandy enough to do that. Like,
you don't think we're bandy?
We are, but
not bandy enough. I don't want to talk about that stuff though. That's the thing. You're right.
Right.
I couldn't do
that. I
that
think
every
it's
week.
fascinating to listen to After Sectionals, and those guys obviously have some wonderful skills.
Yes.
And but talking more pedagogy of that specific grade level and that topic.
Right. And I feel like we talk more about the kids.
Right. Not the music as much, not the I think one thing that I thought was going to be more not problematic but more time consuming was the idea of coming up with episodes.
Oh yeah. Yes.
And I think you and I see, I say I think a lot. I need to stop saying that. It's like a little bit of that self-awareness. Like, I think we used to write out lists
Yeah. Yeah.
about what we could possibly speak about. And we would talk about the trifecta. Like, we used the trifecta much more early on, like talking about
We
it.
almost named the podcast Teaching Trifecta, right?
Right. And we thought that seemed a little nerdy or
Yeah.
dorky.
Chops just seem to stick.
You're right.
I've also had that comment before from like people close to me that listen. They're like, "How do you guys come up with that stuff?" And I'm like, "I don't know. 5 minutes. We just talk and we."
So
Do it.
that is interesting. That I thought. I remember the first episode we made in the men den, like an outdoor porch, about how like the first 10 minutes of that podcast was very awkward because I didn't know if I was talking to you or if I was talking to other people.
Right.
And so it didn't, I mean, that was odd, but it was odd for like 10 minutes. And then it kind of like got into it. So it does feel like we're talking to each other.
Yes.
Right? Like this.
Yes.
But we also know there's a camera or a microphone on. So some of our setting each other up with questions isn't the way we speak in normal life.
It's not?
Right, exactly.
Yeah,
we don't do
yeah,
that.
yeah.
But I think the subject matter is pretty much it. And so in reflection of lesson planning, quote, lesson planning, and how much prep time it takes, I would say 0 or very little.
Yeah.
And I think that's, see, I just said, I think
Yeah, you're right. Okay.
it's interesting that we don't need that. And I'm not saying that to boast, but it's more of like what is coming out of our experience and what's coming
it's
out of our
real.
wants.
It's reality. It's not because if we rehearsed this or we staged it or we sketched all out, it would lose its validity.
Right.
It wouldn't be like off the cuff and real. And I think that's one of the best things about this for us is that it keeps us like on because there's a recording, there's a camera, it keeps us on, but it's not scripted.
Right.
So we have to be authentic. That's our only choice, and we wouldn't want to not be authentic. That's why we do it.
Right.
No, that's true. The episode ideas came very easily, and I don't feel like worried that we would ever run out of stuff.
No.
I thought it would feel cheesier because of we wanted to talk positively. And there are a lot of podcasts with teachers now, as you said, that are a little more dry, sardonic, and sarcastic. And I thought that might be hard to do without coming off as inauthentic. And maybe I do come off as inauthentic. I don't know. But the stuff we've talked about, I felt like it's been really easy or simple maybe to find those things, talk authentically and positively about them, and try and find the solutions or be on track towards solutions.
Right.
I always thought that was going to be difficult, but I haven't listened to a lot of podcasts, kind of broad teaching podcasts that have done that. I don't know.
It makes me think of like the podcast that I listen to the most is called KSR, Kentucky Sports Report.
Bum, 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 bum.
Werewolves of London. And it's hosted by this gentleman. His name is Matt Jones. And he's from Southeast Kentucky. And he birthed this idea of Kentucky Sports Report. And I think it started as a website. Then I think they started doing podcasts. Maybe they did some YouTube things. But it kind of blew up. And it is centered around Kentucky sports, so as in the University of Kentucky. But Matt Jones also has a degree in law.
Wow.
and he's a history buff. And right now he's taken 2 months off, and he's just traveling by himself in Europe. So he is a very well-read person. He's probably 40 years old, I'm thinking. And he started this podcast with his buddies, right?
Cool.
And they do a 2-hour show every day on the radio, but it also gets canned to a podcast.
Okay.
Or you can go to KSR app. I have the app, and you can listen to these guys. And he's got like 3 buds that he does the show with, and usually 2 of them are with him. But it's like they ended up being like his best friends. And I love listening to them, and especially like around basketball season, and then you get all the updates. But I can listen to it, and it will be an hour, and they'll not talk a thing about Kentucky sports. But it's so fascinating. They'll talk about like pop culture, or they'll talk about restaurants, or they'll talk about dating, or going to concerts, or professional wrestling. I don't know, but a lot of times this makes me laugh out loud. And they're so slick with each other. It's so wonderful. Now, if you have 3 people, you kind of go into your lane a little bit more about like the setup guy and the funny guy and right. But the way they banter with each other, but they do eventually talk about important things. They do talk about the Kentucky sports because that's what they're saying, what they want to talk about. But they do talk about a little bit about politics. But the idea that it's like they're with their buddies and they are talking about things they love and they're doing it on their own dime. They started their own Kentucky Sports Report Bar and Grill, and that's where they broadcast from. So it's like a Kentucky history bar and grill, and that's where they broadcast from, is in their booth. So you can go there and go get a cheeseburger and a drink and listen to these guys do their radio show. But it's a guy with his friends talking about things he loves.
And that in its own seems attractive.
It's perfect. And I can't tell you how many times I've told my wife, where I told my sons, I was like, those guys are hilarious. Like they
told me that a few times, yeah.
And like, and when you try to tell somebody like what they were talking about, why it was funny, maybe it's not as funny, but it's just the idea, like they're all together and they have like such humor and such fun doing this. And they do have a history with each other, and it's really, really admirable what they do. And I think they're so good at it. But
and they have a bar and grill.
They have a bar and grill. We could do Chops.
Chops GoFundMe.
Chops House.
Chops House.
Chops Bar and Grill.
Chops Bar and Grill.
But the idea that I think the bringing it together back to Chops is that they enjoy spending time together, which I think you and I enjoy spending time together, but they enjoy talking about things and looking at items through different lenses.
Yes. Well, and to think of this as like PD.
Yes.
I mean, if you tell a teacher, hey, you got a PD day tomorrow, they're going to do this. Right?
Yes.
But when I'm like, oh, we get to record today, that's like exciting.
That is actually.
It's not like we're just like messing around with microphones.
No.
Like I always feel like we learn stuff and we're digging through stuff that no one ever takes the time. I shouldn't say that. It's hard to find the time to if you're not intentional. And some stuff that we've talked about, like I think about the homework episode, the attendance episode, and just stuff like that like we dug into that you don't really have the time to be intentional about in your normal school day. But sitting down and talking about that stuff, I think I learned some things. And I talk to students differently and I listen to students differently because of that stuff. And I think that's it. Like that's why we're doing it.
Right.
And it's not a drag to talk shop. Sometimes it can be in certain like we would not probably record an episode after like a Wednesday night band camp because we're probably done with that. But like we always find times that we're fresh and we talk about it, and it usually is energy giving, not energy taking.
Right.
So I appreciate that.
Yeah, I do too. I have looked forward to the episodes. I think it's a lot of fun to do it, and it's kind of fun to see where it's going to go.
Mm-hmm.
and then kind of realizing where it's going, and then maybe try to get back on track or try to make it intentionally funny, but then also keep coming back to the trifecta and like what we believe and what we think is best. And it is very beneficial, and it's I would say it's not difficult,
No, not a struggle.
right?
It's not simple, but it's easy.
Right. It is easy.
Yeah, it's easy. It's easy to do. Now, from the production side of things,
Yeah.
listeners, I know you know this because you've listened to the podcast. I know nothing. I got 2 microphones plugged in,
Mhm.
recording. I have a very close friend who is like that's his jam, is like editing,
Okay.
videos, audio,
You
all
don't
that
do the
stuff.
editing? Your friend does the editing?
No, I'm saying that's his job.
Okay.
Oh,
Gotcha.
you're punking me. Okay, got it. So his day job is like editing,
Okay.
and he's very good at it. And he actually is like editing a podcast at his day job. And he's like talked to me about that a little bit here and there. And I asked him like, how long does it take you to like edit an episode? He's like, oh, it takes me so long, dude. I spend so much time cutting stuff. And I was like, oh, that's weird. I was like,
Because it doesn't take you that long.
I press go and just like export it. Well, I'm sure. I mean, I'm saying I don't have the chops to do the editing stuff. But
he edits the whole podcast.
he
you
cut.
do the short. You don't edit the podcast.
Right. I just kind of send it away and go. But that, I mean, I think that's part of chops.
Right.
Just like
Let it go.
Send it, you know. But I've gotten better at that, and it's like gone a little quicker, and I've learned how to batch out the reels, so I do them all at once, and then you can schedule them. But that's been fun, and trying to find the hot parts from the episodes has been
Mhm.
kind of fun too. And because you talk about listening to them, like you'll go and listen to a fair
Right.
amount of them, and I typically don't, because when I edit the reels, I kind
You
of
listen to it.
I hear quite a bit. And I'm like, oh yeah, we said that. Oh, this was good. So yeah, I do kind of enjoy it though. Like
Yeah.
it's a fun little side thing that I get to do, and it
Yes.
feels like work in a like a exciting kind of way that's
Yeah.
not like a drag. So
Right.
I've appreciated that, and
I've articulated it as a hobby,
yeah,
and that is, it's a hobby that happens be related to my profession, my career, but it is fun. It is a hobby.
yeah, it is. And I have gotten a little bit, probably too much of the dopamine hits when I'm like looking at the likes coming in and the comments from the socials. Like it's a little addicting.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie. That's kind of
Right.
fun.
Now, but when you look at, now we're actually talking about the production of chops, but how do you know which things to put on reels? Do you look for like the decibel meter
I literally do because that's
where we're laughing?
where we're laughing, and typically those are the like best successful in terms of
Right.
numbers. So yeah, I just like scroll through, and then I see like the spike in the soundtrack, and I just kind of start playing from there. Like, oh, okay, yeah, let's do this one, and then I just cut it up. So do 3 or 4 of those, and sometimes I'll do the ones like I can like remember something you said, and I'm trying to find it, and then I'm like, oh, there it is, and it's like good, like it's
Okay.
deep and impactful. Like I have in mind already whatever you said. Oh, the heart of the teacher. I
Okay.
want to cut that. I'm like, I got that. I want to do that.
You're
So
gonna
that's
use a
good.
big heart on, right? And the heart is gonna be like
I
on
could
my
do
face
that.
or something.
I could
heart.
I could do that. There you go. But that'd be a lot of editing work for the editing team, so we might have
Okay.
to upgrade. But yeah, I mean that stuff's kind of been fun, and I don't know. I kind of dig that. Kind of get the editing skills going. So that was cool. Differences for next year, for the future seasons.
Well, we're gonna be in
New
here.
co-host. That was a joke.
New co-host.
Fire Steve. No, okay.
Fire Steve.
Fire
That'd be the
Steve.
first time. New place.
New studio.
Okay.
Dude, the mugs. I'm so glad you got the mugs. They really add to it. I love the visual.
I kind of feel like though we need. What I'd like to do is get that slide you made on Google Slides with
Yeah,
chops
yeah.
and all the social media
Yeah, yeah.
stickers on it. Like have that printed. We could use that as a backdrop.
And just keep it here in the
Yeah.
windowsill. That'd be
That'd be
nice.
cool.
That'd be nice.
I want to. Well, I have some business propositions.
Business. Like
In-
people? Or wait, what do you mean, business propositions?
Sponsorship,
Sponsors!
right?
Gonna make bank.
Not gonna. So I have some ideas about that. We'll call them collaborations.
Collaborations. Okay.
Then maybe when school gets going again, get the guests going.
Yes. Yes. Because we did have like, we kind of had like an awkward streak with the last couple episodes with like the student ones, which
Yes.
actually were really fun and like interesting.
Right.
But the Chops vibe.
Well, it's different
It is
when you have a
different.
studio audience
Yeah.
and they're asking questions. But I thought of some different people I'd like to have. Like I really enjoyed having our grade school teachers in.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
that was
like when
fun.
we had Heidi Snyder.
Heidi Snyder,
we
fan
had,
favorite. Krista Jones.
Krista Jones and Lori
Rocked
Isolt.
it. Lori Isolt. That was
Right.
fun. Yes.
I also kind of want to get into the wise sages. Like we did have Ken Snook and Scott Spradling in
Mhm.
here. Then also I like the out of context, out of subject area, like with Matt Fafaro,
Grant
it-
Longenbaugh.
Grant Longenbaugh, and talking about those items.
Yes. Yeah, the guests are fun.
Mhm.
That's a good time doing that again. That's good.
Oh, and I
Yes.
did recently. I was at a music gathering of teachers around the Midwest last Tuesday.
Did you give him a Chops business card?
Well, we did talk chops quite a bit.
Did you really?
Yeah. Well, they didn't
know
know
that.
about it, and but the guy I was talking to during the pandemic, I got into his podcast because his was about Illinois bands,
Yeah.
and
And you sent that one to me.
he had a bunch of episodes going through wonderful teachers in Illinois,
Okay.
and some of them I knew. And so that was really fun of listening to him. And then I was like, I know him. And then I got to know him. And then he's a band director in Chicagoland. And I was like connected with him. And then I told him about it. I was like, yeah, you got to go to Chops. I did send him all the contact information.
There was someone you told me about who was there. I saw followed our TikTok. That I forgot to
Wonderful.
tell you that. Yeah, it was like that same day, and I didn't realize that's where it was from.
Yeah.
Nice
So
marketing.
still growing, right?
It's been consistently growing too. Like I had no idea what the numbers were going to be.
Right.
High, low, zero, like no idea. But like looking back at the year, we're not huge by any means, but like if you've been on our socials or something, you see our numbers. Like just the kind of consistent
Yep.
growth has been kind of like encouraging. Like that's cool. And again, we like it, so it's like, why not?
Yeah.
And it's not that time consuming, as you said. It's like an hour a week to talk,
Right. And then you do your editing.
and that's probably shamefully short,
yeah. There you go.
but it works.
Yep.
So that's the vision for Chops. That's where
Okay.
we're going. That's good.
All right. Well, on to episode 51.
Dang.
So is this season 3 or is this the end of season 2?
Good question. We can do whatever we want, as you would say. We have to figure out. I always think it's funny when we talk about when we're going to record next while we're still recording here. It's like very professional. We could probably, if we want to take some time off, we can talk.
Okay.
Or if we want to stream roll through, because I know you'll be around.
Yep.
We could keep going and then cut off. This feels like an end, though. Doesn't it feel like the end of a
Yeah.
season if we're talking Chops and review?
Yes.
So we could say chapter close season 2 and
Yes.
then do season 3.
Okay, season 2 is over.
It's officially over,
Season 2 seasons.
but there is a season 3, so
Yep,
we don't have to
season
fret. This is
3.
not a series finale. It's a season finale.
Oh, we should have a cliffhanger. Jack, you know what I think about you? That you're
Bum, bum, bum. We're like, one of us will not be returning to the show. Find out when season 3 returns.
That would-
Could you imagine doing a whole Chops episode on your own?
no.
Talking for 40 minutes, just whatever. That
No,
would
what
be
if
painful.
I wasn't here though, and then you just left the microphone here in the mug.
In the
And then you just like
But I talked to you like you still are here, and I just like
you
didn't
know what I mean,
notice.
Steve? Yeah, well, yeah, I see what you're saying. And they're like, Jack, you're psychotic.
Get up from each chair every time to talk for you and talk for me.
But
Be
we
good.
will be back next season.
Next season, whenever that may be. Could be next week.
Could be next month.
Could be next month. Won't be next year. It'll be this year. We gotta talk to the production team. Production team's got to talk to the editing team. It's a lot of legalese.
Communication director.
Yeah.
Now I'm the studio controller or studio manager.
Studio manager, communications director, and
Right.
Chief Finance Officer.
Oh my gosh, there's so many people to keep straight. I mean, but when you're flourishing as a podcast, your staff has to get bigger. So, it's a good problem to have, Jack. Okay,
Like it.
so at this time, for Steve Peterson,
Jack Hinkle.
we're out of here.
See ya.